Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online Regulation C VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. In this video, I'll be trying out one of the craziest teams that I've seen from this season. This team finished 23rd at the Malmo Regional Championships, which took place in the middle of May, and it has two very unique Pokemon in SQUWAKABILLY as well as Dudunsparce. SQUWAKABILLY is an Intimidator that also gets access to moves like Final Gambit, Tailwind, as well as Parting Shot, and Dudunsparce is really annoying to fight against because with Serene Grace and Rock Slide, you have a very good chance of flinching your opponents. This team also has Klefki to set up screens and paralyze Pokemon, and is generally centered around Bulk Up Annihilape. The idea is that you use the rest of the pieces to really chip away at your opponent while setting up Annihilape, and Annihilape often just stays on the field for forever while you disrupt with everything else. To round the team out, you've got Assault Vest Tinglu, as well as support Storm Drain Tatsugiri with Draco Meteor, Taunt, and Rapid Spin. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down below. And thanks so much as always for watching. If you enjoy, I'd really appreciate it if you consider leaving a like in the video or subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a ton. Anyway, let's dive into things. Breaking down the team now, as always, rental and paste are included down in the description below, as well as the original team creator. And question of the day, I want to know what Pokemon you think deserves an evolution with us using Dudunsparce. Now, the first Pokemon we have to talk about on this team is SQUWAKABILLY. Before using this team, I would not have been able to tell you a single thing about this Pokemon. Not its stats, not its moves, not its ability, not even its typing. So, you might be wondering, why in the world would anyone actually use this Pokemon? I think what's really interesting is that SQUWAKABILLY is actually very similar to Staraptor. They've got the same typing, they also have Intimidate as an ability, and they both get access to moves like Final Gambit, Brave Bird, and Tailwind. But SQUWAKABILLY's stats are worse in general, so why use this over Staraptor? The main argument is Parting Shot. This Pokemon also gets access to Parting Shot, and this is a really valuable move on this team because this team is all about setting up Annihilape, in my opinion. You don't always have to play only around Annihilape, but to me, Annihilape comes out in practically 100% of the games I played with this team. So the main idea is that SQUWAKABILLY can Parting Shot out immediately while also intimidating, and with Choice Scarf and the Intimidate, it's just really disruptive. So I often lead SQUWAKABILLY and Annihilape or Light Clay Klefki, get that immediate Parting Shot out, bring in Annihilape if I am leading Klefki SQUWAKABILLY, or I just lead SQUWAKABILLY, Annihilape, Parting Shot out, Bulk Up, and then bring something to support the Annihilape, for example. So this is the main move that really distinguishes it from Staraptor, which otherwise I think you would want to consider over this slot if you're looking for just a consistent Final Gambit user. What's really nice is after the Parting Shot, you can end games with Final Gambit. I also sometimes use Final Gambit in the early to mid game just to eliminate a immediate threat to Annihilape to start off the game and trade aggressively. To round things out, you've got Tailwind for speed control and then Brave Bird for just some consistent damage against certain Pokemon as well. Ghost Terra to get around Fake Out from something like Iron Hands, for example. Dudunsparce is the next Pokemon to talk about, and this Pokemon is a nightmare to fight against. You're running the Wide Lens set here with Serene Grace, so your odds of hitting Rock Slide and flinching are incredibly high. Now, as you can see, this Dudunsparce is very unique because it's max speed. It doesn't actually even have any attack investment. The idea is that with max speed, you actually outspeed a lot of those mid-tier speed Pokemon that aren't running that much speed investment these days. Things like Gyarados or Dragonite if they don't have speed investment, for example. And with Thunder Wave or Paralysis in general, you have Paralysis from Glare as well as Thunder Wave, Dudunsparce can outpace pretty much everything that's not Scarfed or has a booster energy boosting speed, for example. And the main idea is that this Pokemon is just really disruptive. It stays on the field for forever. And one thing that you have to consider is, yeah, it's not doing that much damage, but it does a lot of mental damage to your opponent. Maybe not actual damage to your opponent's Pokemon, but mental damage is a really big deal in competitive Pokemon because people are very prone to just making suboptimal plays after a couple of unlucky turns. And that's one big factor with this team. There's a lot of potential ways that your opponents can get really frustrated after just the first couple of turns and then subsequently play suboptimally. One other main reason you actually want to use this Dudunsparce other than just spamming Rock Slide is because it gets access to Hyper Drill, and Hyper Drill actually bypasses Protect, which is really cool as well. So you can use it to finish things off at 1 HP, for example, against something like Champao. Dudunsparce comes out and just clicks Hyper Drill, and as they protect, you just KO them, for example. And Sash is a really common item in this format, for example. So that's it for Squwakabilly and Dudunsparce, both really interesting picks. Like I mentioned, this team is mainly centered around Annihilape. This Annihilape is really bulky, has basically no attack investment, and the main idea for this is because you're just clicking Bulk Up multiple times. I've had games where I click Bulk Up 4 or 5 times and then just, keep clicking Rage Fist. Part of the advantage of this is that it's going to stay on the field for practically forever, and so Rage Fist stacks up. Not quickly, it's normally going to take a little bit of time to actually get there, but at some point, the Annihilape will just become a Pokemon that your opponent can't KO, and you can just KO everything on your opponent's side with Rage Fist in particular. Fire Terra, really valuable against Will-O-Wisp, because otherwise Will-O-Wisp would just completely shut this down. Klefki is used here for support, dual screens, Thunder Wave, Dazzling Gleam with Water Terra, fairly standard. Klefki is a Pokemon that's had some pretty good success this season, finishing second at the Oceania International Championships. Dazzling Gleam alone is just a really solid move with this Pokemon. You think about the number of Pokemon that are weak to Dazzling Gleam in the format, things like Tinglu, Dragonite, Shampoo. You can just slowly chip away at it with Klefki, and a lot of those common Pokemon, such as Dragonite or Shampoo, can't actually do that much to Klefki in return. Water Terra is just nice defensively, also helps out against something like Dondozo in particular. So yeah, the main idea is you often will want to lead Klefki and just set up screens and then set up Annihilape. To round things out, you've got Assault Vest, Water Terra, Tinglu, pretty standard here. Fisher is a move that people often kind of look at and be like, well, is that really a consistent option? But on this team, I think it makes so much sense because games will go on for like 10, 15 plus turns, and if you just hit one Fisher, it can be completely game changing. For the most part, I still try not to rely on it unless it's just my best option, but I do find it valuable against other Pokemon that are trying to set up in front of me with this team. Otherwise, you've got Runation, Stomping, and Heavy, which is pretty standard, and as you'll notice, also no attack investment. This team just doesn't rely that much on actual offense early on because it's meant to kind of chip away and disrupt your opponent while setting up Annihilape for the long run. And then finally, you've got this really interesting Tatsugiri, which is max HP, near max defense, Steel Terra, Safety Goggles, Storm Drain with Rapid Spin and Taunt. All of that is pretty wild, and you might be wondering why in the world would you actually use any of this. Rapid Spin in particular is really interesting because, of course, it frees the user from hazards, right? And so getting rid of Toxic Spikes in particular is really important with this team because one of the best ways to beat Annihilape is just basically out-traded in terms of how much it's healing. So if you're able to poison it, for example, that's actually a really big deal because Annihilape slowly just gets chipped away. So it's really valuable against the Glamora in particular, which is fairly common, but Taunt, Safety Goggles really good into Amoonguss, and then Draco Meteor is just consistent damage as well. Storm Drain also valuable because nothing else on the team resists water. So Tatsu is more situational. For the most part, I'm bringing 4 of the first 5 Pokemon here, and I'm often leading Squwakabilly with Annihilape or Klefki with Annihilape, and some combination of the rest of the Pokemon in the back. So that's it for a quick breakdown. The last thing I want to say, by the way, you cannot go for yourself parting shot into Annihilape to activate Defiant. That would be absolutely broken. That would be really cool, but Defiant only works from the opposing side, so just keep that in mind. As for weaknesses, the first thing I want to call out is that Annihilape is the majority of the offense from this team. So if Annihilape goes down early, it is going to be a lot more difficult for you to win games. The Dunsparce does very little damage. It's mainly meant for disruption. Squwakabilly can maybe snipe one thing off with Final Gambit, but that's basically it. And Klefki's Dazzling Gleams, the Rock Slides from the Dunsparce, Tinglu's Stomping Tantrums, Tatsugiri's Draco. You don't really have any offense investment in any of these Pokemon, right? So you shouldn't expect it to do very much damage. So you have to be very intentional about protecting Annihilape as much as possible. Now, with a team like this, you are more vulnerable to critical hits because games will go on for longer periods of time. So that's something that you can't always control for. I had one game where my Klefki set up Reflect, it got Flare Blitz KO'd by a Talonflame that crit me, and then Annihilape got crit by a Sucker Punch at like 45%, and then it also just got KO'd immediately after I had set up Reflect and clicked Bulk Up, and I was Drain Punching that turn onto the Champao. So you are going to lose to crits when using this team at some point. You just have to keep that in mind, but the main point I'm trying to make here is you really have to protect Annihilape as much as you can, because if it goes down, you are going to struggle a lot more in the long run. I've also struggled against Pokemon that I can't paralyze because this team loves going for Thunder Wave or Glare with Klefki and Dudunsparce. And so, for example, against Garchomp, I think my very first game with this team, I ran into Tailwind and my opponent had Talonflame Garchomp, and Garchomp was Swords Dance and Clear Amulet, and I just basically could not do anything against it, especially, like, my only option was to kind of Final Gambit it, but I didn't consider Final Gambit well. Squwakabilly just ended up eating up a lot of damage, and I was at a point where I couldn't Final Gambit anymore, and my opponent could just keep out-trading me because it gets the +2 attack with Swords Dance, whereas Annihilape only gets +1 on both stats with Bulk Up. So Clear Amulet in general, pretty annoying because Squwakabilly loves obviously intimidating and going for Parting Shot, but also just Pokemon that can out-trade Annihilape in terms of setup. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you're able to disrupt Annihilape and stop it from recovering consistently from leftovers, that's a really big deal. So Toxic Spikes, still valuable. Toxic as a move in general, also valuable. And being able to actually get rid of leftovers from something like a Trick or a Trick Choice Specs, for example, Golden Go or Choice Scarf Golden Go, or a knockoff can also be really disruptive to this Annihilape. And I think the main thing with this team is learning how to deal enough damage across the board, because you are not getting a one-hit KOs really at all until Rage Fist stacks up. So also playing around the Rage Fist stacks is pretty valuable. And because Annihilape relies really heavily on Bulk Up, if you're able to deny the Bulk Ups from something like Taunt, or just go for Haze, for example, and get rid of all of the stat boosts, that's also really valuable. And one of the last things I'll say is that I actually struggled a ton against Amoonguss, and that's now, after having that experience, I bring Tatsugiri pretty much in any matchup where I see Amoonguss, but you can potentially leverage that to your advantage, end up not actually bringing Amoonguss, and make Tatsugiri basically a useless pick. This is very situational, and it's either going to save you games or it's going to be completely useless. And so the games that I lost where I brought Tatsugiri, my opponent did a great job baiting it, and then I just couldn't do anything with it. So those are the main things that I'll highlight here. Okay, we've got Chimpao, Excalibur, Amoonguss, Dragonite, Rotom, and Corviknight. So, Chimpao, Dragonite, obviously pretty standard, but it's actually pretty interesting to see the rest of my opponent's team here. The first thing I notice is no rock resistances or immunities. So, I think we can honestly kind of rock slide our way through this with the Dudunsparce in the early game, potentially. Bulk Up Annihilape is really good. I think it has to worry about Will-O-Wisp primarily from the Rotom Wash. I could Fire Terra to get around it, but if I Fire Terra, I'm suddenly weak to Hydro Pump. So that's one thing to pay attention to. Honestly, here I'm down to, like, I think chip away with the Dudunsparce and Klefki early on. I like Squwakabilly here for Intimidate and a potential Final Gambit to finish off Corviknight. And then Annihilape in the back. Alright, let's try this. I actually think this could be a great demonstration for Dudunsparce in particular. The idea is just like slowly chip away and be a nuisance. I think the main thing I'm going to have to respect here is Amoonguss, because of course it can go for Pollen Puff. So, of course I can paralyze everything all I want, but if I'm not able to actually deal enough damage to get knockouts, and then Amoonguss just heals everything back up with a Pollen Puff, that's a nightmare for me, right? But it'll honestly be kind of hard for Amoonguss to get attacks off. If they lead Amoonguss, I just go straight for like Thunder Wave into Rock Slide, turn 2, switch Klefki out into Squwakabilly, then I pressure with a Brave Bird knockout onto it. So, yeah. The main thing here is I think Bulk Up Annihilape is really good, but it takes a little bit of time to get going, so I'm going to prioritize that a little bit later on in the battle. It's going to be Chimpao and Corviknight, okay? So with this, what do I want to do? Pretty easy to protect Dudunsparce here on turn 1. Reflect is obviously really safe. I actually do think it's very likely we end up Final Gambiting Corviknight, because I think it's going to try to just set up on me right now. So what I'm going to do is just attack around Corviknight and try to knock out everything next to it. My question is who I want to Terra here. I'm thinking about saving Fire Terra, but I can't go for Thunder Wave on a Chimpao. It's a Dark type. It might just Sacred Sword to Dudunsparce. Reflect. I'm fine going for Reflect and Protect turn 1 here. Nice. Chimpao protects. Okay, great. They're probably going to go for Bulk Up or Iron Defense here, I would think. But with this Reflect, I feel decent. I can Rock Slide Dazzling next turn. Okay. Oh, they actually just Iron Head Klefki. Okay. Did a pretty decent amount of damage, honestly. Like, with Reflect, that honestly feels like Choice Band to me. Huh. I wonder if that's actually the case. Okay, given that, I'm down to Dazzling Gleam here. And I think I'm actually down to commit my Terra here into Ghost so I don't take a Sacred Sword. and go for Rock Slide. I could have also swapped out in a Squwakabilly. I think that's another consideration, but... Oh, you know, I was saying it felt like banned Corviknight damage. I mean, I did have the defense drop, so I'm not sure I factor that into my calculation, but I can't say I know my Corviknight into Klefki calcs with Chien-Pao in the field super well. But we connect on Thunderwave. So that's nice. Nice. They Sacred Sword into our Ghost typing. Brilliant. Dudunsparce clicks Rock Slide. And the chip has begun. Okay. Nope, it's not Banded Corviknight. Yeah, it was just Chien-Pao's defense drop. Gave it the extra edge. That's fine, though. Like I said, I'm kind of saving this for a late game final gambit at this point, I think. Here I'm down to Dazzling Gleam and Protect. Alright, Chien-Pao protects, that's fine. I think my main question is whether or not it goes for, like, Rock Slide plus, Sucker Punch onto Dudunsparce next turn. It's a possibility, but I don't mind just trying to get the knockout onto it with Dazzle and Rock Slide right now, I think. Clear it out of the way. And they actually Brave Bird into us. Okay, that also works. Cool. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go for a Sucker Punch here. I could switch to Dudunsparce out, honestly, but if they're Brave Birding that slot, it's like I don't really want Annihilape to eat up a Brave Bird, you know. I'm fine just letting them Brave Bird and Sucker Punch me. Sucker Punch shouldn't do that much damage, and it's very likely we get a flinch here or a Para with Rock Slide. It did a little more than I would have liked, admittedly, but that's fine. Should KO Chien-Pao here with this combo. Yeah, cool. Now I can go for a Light Screen or Thunder Wave, whatever's coming out this next turn. They don't get Para or flinched here. And I get crit. Okay, that's one of the downsides of using this comp. That's a little frustrating, but it's okay. I think I'm honestly going to bring Squwakabilly out now and actually just straight up Final Gambit to eliminate Corviknight and play towards a Annihilape endgame. I think the one concern with that is if they bring out Rotom Wash right now, that's going to be immune to the... It's going to be immune to Thunder Wave, and then it could potentially Will-O-Wisp Annihilape. That being said, Rotom, like, Annihilape can keep bulking up and healing up against Rotom, so it's actually not the worst matchup. But yeah, I'm actually down to just go to Squwakabilly now and get rid of Corviknight. I'm going to Baxcalibur. Okay, interesting. Ideally, it's not Clear Amulet here. Getting this Intimidate would be huge onto it. Nice. Mirror Armor is fine. We don't really care about our attack here. I still have Reflect up, so yeah, I'm down to just go for Thunder Wave on a Baxcalibur here and just Final Gambit, eliminate Corviknight. And this opens up us for an Annihilape endgame, right? It'll be a -1 Baxcalibur, paralyzed with Reflect up, so that really shouldn't be relevant. So then it's kind of down to what their final Pokemon is. One thing I can do in this game, by the way, is self-click Thunder Wave. So if I'm up against a Moongus, I can paralyze myself to make sure that they can't put me to sleep. And then I can just set up with the Annihilape and Bulk Up. So that last one was obviously a little bit unfortunate because if I didn't get crit, we should be surviving the turn with the Dudunsparce, and I can just paralyze Baxcalibur. They end up protecting, which is totally fine. This is one of the cool things about Squwakabilly, right? People just don't really know what it does. Before seeing this team, legitimately had no idea, got access to all of these different moves, and the fact that it has Intimidate. So, Final Gambit, I think, is always a really big surprise here, and that eliminates Corviknight. But that's a trade I'm willing to take, because in my opinion, Corviknight was the most annoying Pokemon for Annihilape to deal with, and like I said, we have Reflect up and Baxcalibur's at -1 attack. That Pokemon basically feels irrelevant to me at this point. So, it kind of boils down to what their last Pokemon is. It could be a Moongus, Dragonite, or the Rotom Wash. And it's going to be Rotom. Okay. So the main annoying thing about Rotom is that I can't go for Paralysis onto it, but it's fine. I think the main debate here is whether or not I want to paralyze Baxcalibur. This thing's damage output's not really relevant, though, to be honest. Like, I think here I'm down to just Light Screen and start Bulk Upping. I think unless my opponent has set up, Annihilape actually should just win this endgame at this point. So they're going to go for a Terra. That's fine. Between the amount of bulk that Annihilape has and Bulk Up, and they actually go for Terra onto Baxcalibur, okay. Into ground. So probably a ZQ, but that's fine, right? Every time you click Earthquake, you are stacking up Annihilape right now. Also, you're at -1 and Reflect is up, so the damage output from that shouldn't be too significant. And we're already faster than both. Okay, that's good to know. Not a huge surprise here, but given that Annihilape doesn't really have that much speed investment, always good to confirm. Rotom's actually slower than Excalibur here as well, so this will be Rage Fist stack number 1, and yep, that did like just over 20 damage. It's actually Discharge from Rotom. That's pretty interesting. I was gonna say I don't even mind a para right now. Like, if you're using Discharge there, I really don't think you have Will-O-Wisp, because part of me is thinking about actually self-clicking Thunder Wave here just to prevent getting burnt. Still have 2 turns of Reflect. I really don't think they have Will-O-Wisp if you're clicking Discharge there. I don't really want to play through the odds of attacking through all these hits, so I'm happy to just go for another Bulk Up right now, I think. Take advantage of the fact I still have 2 turns of Reflect. Like, after this turn, I'll have taken 4 hits, right? So it'll be a +4 stack Rage Fist. And I'm still healing back from leftovers as well. Okay, Annihilape essentially completely walls back Excalibur, right? Like, that's one of the strengths of this team, creating these endgames. Yep, and they just click Discharge again. Okay, cool. Nice, no para. With that, I guess my main question is whether or not a Rage Fist gets the knockout onto Rotom right now, or back Excalibur at that. I think I'll just protect here. Like, I just want more leftovers recovery in this endgame right now. The only way we're really losing is to a crit, right? So, okay, we bait out Protect from backs as well. Nice. What else does Rotom have? He just keeps clicking Discharge. Okay. So, yeah, I really don't think he has Will-O-Wisp. But, like I said, quite frankly, I think even if it had Will-O-Wisp, Annihilape would have been able to just get to +6 attack throughout this endgame. The main thing is if I'm burned, it takes me a lot more time to get there. So, it leaves me a lot more vulnerable to critical hits, for example. Okay, Reflect wears off. But I'm just going to launch the Rage Fist here into Rotom. It's +2 attack, and we've eaten 4 hits at this point, so I'm fairly sure it should KO. They actually go for the double on backs, cool. But because the back Excalibur is intimidated, I just don't care about it that much, honestly. And, like, Rotom has more secondary effects, like it could crit or get a para onto me. So, yep, we get the knockout onto Rotom. Brilliant. I think Rage Fist honestly just gets the KO here, but I think if I Drain Punch, even if they crit me, they shouldn't be able to win the game. Whereas I fear the scenario in which they actually survive a Rage Fist and then crit me for a KO, but at full HP, I don't think Excalibur is KOing me. So we're just going to Drain Punch here. Rage Fist would have gotten the KO. I think the main thing that I'm getting used to is this Annihilape. Like, it doesn't have any attack investment at all, right? So, yep, they go for Glaive Rush. And that practically does nothing. Cool. I mean, this is 180 HP, 140 defense Annihilape, and we know it's not like Choice Band on Excalibur or Life Orb, so. But I think I should just not underestimate how strong Rage Fist is. It's just one of those scenarios where it's like I don't know their EV spread, and I feel fairly confident surviving a Glaive Rush there, so yeah. Either way, though, I'm really glad we got to feature Dudunsparce as well as SQUAWAKABILLY in this one. You know, Dudunsparce was mainly used in the early game to just annoy them a little bit, and honestly, Dudunsparce didn't get very lucky in this one. We got 1 flinch or para onto the Corviknight, but I ate up a crit, and that turn, like, Corviknight managed to attack through as well. Things could have gone even better for me, obviously, if we just got in that knockout immediately, but the interesting thing is because the Dudunsparce went down right when Chien-Pao went down, the free switching into SQUAWAKABILLY and that final Gambit allowed me to just open the door up for Annihilape in this endgame. And I felt pretty good with Annihilape regardless of what my opponent had in the back. I think the most concerning probably would have been Choice Band, Flying Terra Dragonite, to which I could like paralyze with Thunder Wave, protect with Annihilape, then go for like Bulk Up, and then, you know, just slowly start healing back. Like after Bulk Up plus the Reflect and attacking through para, like I felt decent against Dragonite. And against Amoonguss, like I said, I would have considered going for Self Thunder Wave onto Annihilape just to prevent them from sporing me. So, yeah. Okay, wow, what an interesting team. Top 500 rank, T-Tar, Houndstone, Lycanroc, Meowscarada, Flutter, Chi-Yu. My question here is, who is Focus Sash? Like, Lycanroc, Flutter, Chi-Yu, Meowscarada all like to run it. I think it's either Band or Sash most of the time on Lycanroc. Meowscarada could run the other one of those two, basically. Flutter could be Specs. It could be Booster. Chi-Yu could be Specs here. Safety Goggles is a thing. This feels like a Ting-Lu kind of game to me. It'll be kind of hard to outpace my opponent. So I'm thinking like Klefki, Ting-Lu in the early game. I think Ting-Lu's just really bulky. You can set up Reflect. I think if you're my opponent, you normally try to lead to beat Annihilape. If I were to... Ooh, actually, you know what's really bad for Ting-Lu? Meowscarada. I guess I could water... No, I can't Water Terra. That doesn't work. Hold on. Meowscarada is a really big problem for me, isn't it? I think I actually lead SQUAWAKABILLY then. Because I can pressure with an immediate KO onto it. Definitely bringing Annihilape here. This doesn't feel like the best matchup for Dudunsparce. I think I'd rather bring... Ting-Lu is just too good to not bring in this matchup, in my opinion. So, yeah. To me, like, Dudunsparce is better against slower-paced teams, but my opponent has a lot of speed, so it's like, even if I paralyze things with Thunder Wave or Glare, I'm still not necessarily outspeeding, right? Because it's like Houndstone, it's Lycanroc, both have the sand, right? So it's Chi-Yu and T-Tar. Okay. What do I want to do here? There's no way it's Sash Chi. I'm honestly thinking of just straight up going for Final Gambit onto this. Eliminating Chi-Yu clears the path for Annihilape a little. Well, I guess it's not that important. What is Annihilape mainly worried about? It's actually Flutter Mane more than anything. But I don't know. Like, trading here and then getting a screen up with Klefki feels really good. So, yeah, I'm gonna Reflect here and just go straight for Final Gambit, I think. Okay, no switch. No Terra. There's Final Gambit. Oh man, that's so fun. Okay, so screen up number 1 is up, and yeah, I didn't need to light screening. I just like felt like, you know, you're not gonna be Sash Chi-Yu if you're leading this, right? And they just go for Rock Slide, perfect. I just mainly am curious if they bring out like Meowscarada right now, but this is super bulky Ting-Lu. It's impish max defense, so I would expect to survive, honestly. But I think we go into Annihilape here. Its matchup in a T-Tar is just so good. So, decent start right now. That is Meowscarada coming out. Okay. Obviously, it's going to be able to crit through me. But I can Fire Terra to get around that. I think this turn, though, I don't mind going for a Dazzling Gleam plus a Protect. If I had to guess, it's Choice Band, Protean, Meowscarada. So, T-Tar switches, which isn't too surprising. That's Lycanroc. Fine by me. With Reflect, we're looking pretty good right now, honestly. Play rough. Ooh. Yep, it is Protean. That means I can paralyze you with Thunder Wave now, though. I can paralyze either Pokemon. Reflect is going to pay huge dividends throughout the course of this one as well. Like, the main question here is Annihilape, of course, could go for a Fire Terra, but if I Fire Terra, I'm suddenly weak to Rock Slide from Lycanroc, which is a little bit concerning. It's not like Ting-Lu really wants to switch into a Band Play Rough either, though. Three turns of Sandstorm. So this, I mean, we really want to just eliminate this, because once this is eliminated, it opens the door for Ting-Lu a little bit more. I mean, if you're running Play Rough and you're Protean, I'm like 99% sure this is Choice Banded. So I'm thinking of just going for Thunder Wave right now onto Lycanroc, Fire Terra, and then just Rage Fist. I went for Rage Fist assuming Rock Slide comes out here. I guess I might flinch them, though. Or, sorry, paralyze them. Alright, and get a full para. But I think with Reflect Up, I don't need to be that worried about Annihilape, and I really just, like, want to cover for them. You know, I actually think the better play was to just Thunder Wave Meowscarada and maybe Drain Punch it. I just didn't know if a Drain Punch would KO, quite frankly. Yep, so they go for Play Rough. Oh, I actually dodge it. That is not a great dodge. Okay, I mean, I guess I'll take it. At the end of the day, the main thing I was worried about was getting... that was obviously a really lucky turn. The main thing I was worried about was getting flinched by Rock Slide. Like, we actually want that Play Rough to hit, because then it increases our damage output from Rage Fist. But that's fine. With that, they're just one Dazzling Gleam away from getting knocked out, so I'm just going to Gleam and Protect right now. It's a little bit awkward because I did end up committing my Fire Terra, but I committed my Fire Terra because specifically if I didn't and that Play Rough connected, it would have been a disaster. They make a good switch here, though. I like that play a lot from their end. I think that's smart. Okay, Annihilape protects. Yeah, if that had connected, then we would have just gotten the knockout there immediately, which would have been really nice, but that's fine. And, like, I don't mind taking damage with Annihilape in this position because it just boosts my Rage Fist stacks, and I want that right now. So, Gleam just to chip away. Curious if an Tyranitar Terra's here. Kind of feels like it has to. Last turn of Sandstorm. I mean, my opponent might just double Rock Slide. I'm really interested in switching to Ting Lu here, quite frankly. Yeah, especially with Fire Terra Annihilape, I don't think Banded Meowscarada actually has a way to really deal with it, so... That was a good T-Tar switch, though. I think I could have Drain Punched that slot that turn relatively safely to win the game, so... I wish I was a little bit more aggressive that turn in particular. That's fine. Should be T-Tar Terroring here. I think otherwise you're just too vulnerable to Drain Punch. But now it means I can paralyze you with Thunder Wave, as long as you're not Dark Terra, which would make very little sense. Yep, Flying Terra, cool. So now we have a safe kind of like Stomping Tantrum, for example, into the Lycanroc slot. We do get parried here. We continue to just Dazzling Gleam away, slowly chip, and just Rock Slide. Perfect. Yep, that's exactly why I switched in Ting Lu. I figured they were just going to double Rock Slide in that position. It is funny because the Fire Terra, like, theoretically has worked against me, but I, once again, kind of needed to do that for Meowscarada. We got lucky with the misses there, but the odds of that were obviously incredibly slim. I honestly don't think it makes too much of a difference. So I'm going to Thunder Wave into you, and then just Stomping Tantrum into you. Okay, Lycanroc doesn't protect, which is nice. And once again, this is super bulky Ting Lu. 52 HP, max defense. And we get another para. Yeah, I mean, that's what this team does, right? You really put the odds in your favor when you're just paralyzing everything. But given that they weren't protecting there, I think the only thing that would have really scared me was a Rock Slide flinch. So you would need to attack through para, hit Rock Slide, and flinch me. Stay low kick into Ting Lu. Cool. Okay. So Meowscarada comes back out. But like I said, I'm pretty sure it's Choice Banded. Also, this was really interesting. It was plus Sand Tyranitar, which makes sense because they have Lycanroc and Houndstone. But yeah, now we just go for Dazzling Gleam here plus Heavy Slam. Guarantee the KO onto Meowscarada, and then we win the game 1v1 with Annihilape. So yeah, I wish we could have played this game out without the Play Rough and the double Rock Slide miss, just to see how things would have played out. Like I said, the worst case, the absolute worst case was getting Rock Slide crit that turn. I think crits are the main thing you want to be careful about with this team, because games can go on for a really long time. But I do think I missed out the opportunity when the Meowscarada switched out into Tyranitar. A Drain Punch into that slot would have been huge. I also could have Drain Punched the Meowscarada instead of Rage Fisting that turn, but I was expecting to get a Rage Fist stack from eating up the Play Rough. So the idea was to just guarantee the knockout, because I wasn't sure if Drain Punch would get the knockout. It looked like it would have been kind of close in the end. But yeah, I think once again, the main thing that's been really valuable so far in these games is SQUAWAKABILLY coming out and getting not only a really valuable Intimidate, but also just sniping something with Final Gambit. That's been absolutely huge and pivotal in both of the games that we've had with it today. So that's one of the main reasons why I think it's such a cool Pokemon. Oh, wow. We've got Slowpoke and Torkoal here. I actually used the Slowpoke team on this channel before in Scarlet and Violet, so if you want to see me try it out, check out the video, link down below. The idea behind Slowpoke, by the way, is that you can surf to activate Weakness Policy on Torkoal, and then Torkoal can just spam Eruption. So this generally feels like a Trick Room-oriented team, where you can go with Annihilape, for example, and Final Gambit. I can also Final Gambit with SQUAWAKABILLY. If I were my opponent, like, the main leads you're going to go with here are Annihilape plus the Slowbro or the Amoonguss plus Slowbro. And aim to just set up Trick Room. So, I think I don't mind. I actually want to bring Tatsugiri in this one. Tatsugiri. I don't think we bring SQUAWAKABILLY in this one. Tatsugiri, Annihilape, Ting-Lu. I think Klefki is the safer pick, but I think the ability to flinch and breakthrough protects with the Dudunsparce is pretty cool, so I'm going to bring it here instead. But SQUAWAKABILLY, not the best here, given that... I actually think the argument in bringing SQUAWAKABILLY is a late game Final Gambit. Basically, like, stall out Trick Room, bring it out, and then Final Gambit to KO something. Interesting. They're actually just going to go with Slowpoke and Torkoal outright. Okay. So, normally in this position, you would expect the Torkoal to protect as Slowpoke just goes for a Trick Room setup. And then go for Surf into Weakness Policy this subsequent turn. It's going to be Oblivious Slowpoke here. Like, I mainly let Annihilape to actually cover for Amoonguss. So, Taunt not as effective here. Annihilape could pretty easily click Bulk Up here on turn 1, though. I personally don't mind switching in Ting-Lu here. And the other debate is actually clicking Draco in case they don't protect for some reason. Okay, I actually don't mind covering for that. Yeah, they go for the obvious protect, but it's fine. We get Bulk Up. And so, like, Slowpoke now is going to set up Trick Room, right? And the idea here is that you should have Heal Pulse with the Slowpoke. But, basically what I can do here is next turn protect Annihilape Draco Meteor into Torkoal. And I actually might want to just Draco Rage Fist immediately here, quite frankly. Because they'll probably go for Surf plus Eruption. So, Draco, Fire Terra, or just Rage Fist. There's a Terra on their end. Into Torkoal. Yep. I think this lead was a little bit risky on their end, because if I just lead anything that puts on pressure against Slowpoke on turn 1, and I double up into that slot, they're going to be in really bad shape. Here's Fire Terra. I wonder if I could have opted for Drain Punch here instead, but I don't know. I don't mind securing the KO here. Here's Surf in the sun. Should be Weakness Policy on Torkoal. It'd make my dream if they brought out a Amoonguss after this turn to try to Spore Tatsugiri, and I just taunted and completely wall it. Yep, so there's the Eruption as expected. But Tatsu resists this very nicely, and Annihilape takes that pretty well as well. Beautiful. So we get Draco onto Torkoal. Oh. Okay, this Tatsugiri doesn't really have special attack investment, so I wasn't expecting that to knock out, but we did have a special attack boost thanks to Storm Drain, so this game highlights the value of Storm Drain, which I think is pretty cool. And now Annihilape gets the Rage Fist off. And it's stacked twice already thanks to Surf plus the Eruption. Does get a critical hit. We are at +1. Part of me thinks that did matter. But honestly, I'd rather have my opponent keep Slowpoke on the field. Because like Slowpoke doesn't provide that much value for my opponent after setting up Trick Room and Surfing. But Tatsugiri I think is just really interesting as a pick in this one in general. So they bring out Gastrodon and their own Annihilape. Like I said, I expect that Annihilape to be a Final Gambit set. I think Earth Power into Annihilape here certainly makes a lot of sense. I don't mind conserving Tatsu. I think switching to Ting Lu here and just protecting this turn is fine. I think double protecting is also fine, but I don't mind getting rid of this special attack drop. So let's go into Ting Lu and then protect. And I'm glad to have brought out Tatsugiri in a game because it doesn't come out that frequently with this team, and I brought it mainly as an Amoonguss counter because otherwise Amoonguss is a huge pain to deal with this team in my opinion, but it also just worked as a damage dealer, and you can make some pretty cool plays thanks to Storm Drain. Ah, okay, so it is not Scarf Final Gambit and Annihilape. They just offer Muddy Water. Okay, that's really not going to do too much in the sun and with Ting Lu out on the field. That did 14 damage to Ting Lu. Yeah. I think my main question is whether or not an Earth Power KOs Annihilape. With Ting Lu out, I don't actually expect it to. Muddy Water is also an interesting choice because you would have just continued boosting Tatsugiri. Basically, the play I want to make here is I know that you just went for a Protect with this, so I can double up onto that pretty safely. Yeah. So I'm happy to just go for Runation here into Rage Fist. And they just go for Muddy again. Okay. Yeah, that practically does nothing. That's also really risky because you risk potentially activating Defiant. But Runation brings Annihilape down to 50. Heal back from Citrus, but Rage Fist here will just get the knockout. Nice. I think the main thing is when you're going up against, Slowpoke, Torkoal, Gastrodon, it's pretty clear what their main goal is. So I led in a way that I thought would put me in a pretty decent spot if they led with what I thought were the two most threatening leads. But Storm Drain Tatsu really put in work in this one, right? It was able to not take that much damage from Eruption and retaliate back with the Draco Meteor. So it's not like it's designed for this matchup. This is a pretty niche matchup, obviously, but it was basically the perfect Pokemon to bring into it. So that's what you can do with Storm Drain Tatsu. Like I said, though, I mainly bring it with this team if I see Amoonguss in team preview. So that's kind of the main motivation. I think Pokemon choice-wise, I think I'm pretty much always bringing Annihilape, Tatsu, plus Ting Lu. I think the fourth slot is pretty flexible. I wanted Dudunsparce just because we don't get to use it very often, but this game felt like a highlight of Storm Drain Tatsu to me. Okay, we've got Dragonite Shampoo here with Gyarados, Kingambit, Iron Moth, and Great Tusk. Very aggressive offensive team here overall. Pretty physically oriented, so feels like Annihilape should be able to just go off. I'm thinking just Annihilape Klefki lead. And I'm down for SQUAWAKABILLY plus the Dudunsparce in the back. Ting Lu's probably fine here. Don't really need the Tatsugiri. The main idea is to just start bulking up with Annihilape pretty quickly. SQUAWAKABILLY can be used to Final Gambit something as well. Ting Lu here, I think is like interesting to bring mainly to chip away at things, but I think the main argument is I would bring Ting Lu over Dudunsparce. In this matchup, I'm always bringing Klefki, Annihilape, and SQUAWAKABILLY. Klefki, because my opponent doesn't really have a way to deny a turn 1 Reflect. They don't have something like Fake Out, for example, so I can just set it up immediately. Annihilate, because that is the primary attacker with this team. There are honestly very few games where you're not bringing Annihilate with this team, as I've mentioned. And SQUAWAKABILLY, because they have 5 physical attackers, so Intimidate's obviously really good. I guess technically against Kingambit, we are not actually decreasing its attack with a Intimidate, but those three I think are pretty much non-negotiable. I am always bringing it in this matchup. They're all just way too good to not bring. And then Tatsugiri is like the clear one to eliminate. The argument to bring Tatsugiri is if Gyarados in a best of 3 ended up being like a super offensive set, use like Dragon Dance and Waterfall, for example, but I feel like the likelihood of that's fairly slim. This is interesting though, because they go with Gyarados plus the Iron Moth, so with this, I can only get one screen up, right? So the question is, would I prefer to Reflect, which is valuable against all of my opponent's Pokemon other than the Iron Moth? It's also speed on the Moth. I'm curious about this set in general. I could also Thunder Wave. I expect this to just go for a fire type attack, right? So I think a turn 1 Terra here and Bulk Up is generally safe. I don't mind Light Screen here because it's not special attack boosting Moth, and if you're not going for Overheat, I think Klefki might be able to survive something like a Flamethrower or Heat Wave, for example. And if Klefki survives the turn and I get another screen off, that's obviously the ideal outcome. But to me here, Gyarados, I guess theoretically could just go for Waterfall immediately onto Annihilape. Moth actually protects, which is totally okay with me. I think Annihilape can snowball this game pretty quickly now. They might go for a Taunt here, but Annihilape is faster than Gyarados, so that's also really good to see and confirm. Gyarados generally doesn't run that much speed investment these days, and they do go for Taunt onto the Klefki slot. That's fine. Even just getting that single Light Screen up to help out against Moth is a really big deal. Now I expect Gyarados to Waterfall or Taunt Annihilape. I'm mainly curious what Moth wants to go for here. Could be a Fire type attack into the Klefki slot. I think the Dudunsparce is a decently safe switch. I'm kind of down to Bulk Up again here, because I just don't really think they can deal too much damage to me at this point. So I'll Bulk Up, switch into Dudunsparce, then I can go for something like Glare onto Gyarados, or just Rock Slide, Rage Fist next turn. I just don't find it that valuable to be clicking Rage Fist this turn, because I don't expect to do that much damage with it anyway, right? We're not going to get a knockout onto either Pokemon. So they bring out Dragonite, but that's totally okay. And the fun thing is with the Dudunsparce now, I can just start glaring everything and paralyzing everything. So I think the one thing that we're hoping for is to not get crit by anything right now. A crit is one of the best win conditions you can have against this team, and it's going to happen a decent amount of time if you're playing a lot of games with this team. Thunder Wave is also a good option from them, is of course going to be able to paralyze me. Now you can go for Waterfall, maybe go for Paraflinch, for example. The thing is, Annihilape shouldn't really be taking too much damage at this point. I mean, I'm at +3 attack, so I'm happy to just start attacking. I think my main question is, do I want to go for Rock Slide here? Would I prefer to go for a Glare instead? Protect is a fairly rare move on Gyarados as well. I think here I'm happy to Rage Fist the Gyarados slot and Rock Slide. The Dunsparce is faster than both here, so we get a super effective Rock Slide into both. No flinch or para on, or sorry, no flinch on Gyarados. Dragonite's going to flinch instead, and Annihilape is not going to flinch. So, interesting sequence of events there, but that's going to KO Gyarados. That Waterfall did more than I expected, by the way, given that we were at +2 defense. But this is one of the upsides of the Dunsparce. You can catch opponents off guard because it actually has a lot of speed investment. I feel like no one really knows the base speed of the Dunsparce unless you've used it before, or I don't know, you just have extensive Dudunsparce knowledge. Chien-Pao comes out. So with Chien-Pao, I can bring in SQUAWAKABILLY now. We have a bunch of plays we can make here, honestly. I obviously don't want to give up any of my boosts. It's just the paras that are a little bit scary right now. I personally would love to go for a Drain Punch here onto the Chien-Pao and then pivot out into SQUAWAKABILLY. I also think at this point, the damage output I get from Klefki's Dazzling Gleam is actually pretty significant as well, so don't want to discount that. The last thing to keep in mind is that my opponent does have Iron Moth in the back, so I want to make sure I have a good way to beat that, because right now Annihilape is still kind of the main carry. Alright, they go for E-Speed. Cool. Probably Sacred Sword. Ah, they've got Haze on Chien-Pao. Okay. That's going to be a really good counter to what I have here, but that's fine if I don't get parried here. But I spoke it into existence. Yeah, because if I don't get parried there, we get Drain Punch. We probably just bring Chien-Pao down to Focus Sash, and we're looking pretty good. So it's a little frustrating, but it's fine. That is going to be a really good counter to what I have here, though. So they found a good approach to beating the main strategy we had in this one. So nicely done. honestly would love to just Final Gambit Dragonite here. Get that out of the way. But I think Drain Punching Champound switching to Klefki is also fine. I do leave myself now vulnerable to a double up on Annihilape, though. I think if I didn't get Parrot that last turn and I bring Champound to Sash, I would feel 100% confident in winning this battle. The game is a little bit harder for me now. Nicely played. Double up onto Annihilape to get rid of Annihilape. Yep. That haze was beautiful. It was a really, really good haze. So this also means they don't have Sacred Sword on the Chien-Pao. Okay, yeah, this endgame is actually going to be substantially harder for me now. Probably could have considered protecting there instead. I have to worry about getting hazed by Chien-Pao again. I could bring out Dudunsparce. Yeah, I don't mind that. Honestly, kudos to them for finding a way to break through Annihilape in this one, because I thought it was a really tough matchup for them. I think, like, Protect and Dazzling this turn into Reflect Rock Slide next turn. And I want to conserve Final Gambit for the Iron Moth in this endgame. Nice. Spinner into us. And we know they don't have Sacred... I guess we haven't 100% confirmed it, but the likelihood of it is pretty slim. Dragonite actually has low kick, okay. Klefki will get Dazzling Gleam off. It's really good damage. Wow. Do I want to Reflect here then? Or is it better to just Rock Slide Dazzling Gleam? Eliminate Chien-Pao. I don't know how much Spinner plus Low Kick is supposed to do to me here. But I also wouldn't expect Rock Slide to KO Chien-Pao. Yeah, I'm actually going to go for the knockout here. Okay, Chien-Pao protects. That's fine, although it is maybe a missed opportunity then, assuming they're low kicking. But then I guess with this, next turn I can just protect and dazzle again, right? And obviously I have a flinch chance on Dragonite here as well. Rock Slide honestly does a ton there as well, but no flinch this time around. Does the Dudunsparce survive Ice Spinner this next turn now is the other question I have. Or does another Dazzling KO Dragonite? It's pretty easy for me to just go for another Protect here. My third question is, how much HP do we think Iron Moth is running, right? Like, do we think it actually has any HP investment? Squawakabilly's base HP is actually higher, so the main thing is obviously an extreme speed from this. I think Protect here into Dazzle is really safe. Yeah, they go for the double. Cool. Yeah, Klefki and Dudunsparce honestly put in a ton of work here, and Squawakabilly should be able to close out this game for me. My opponent hasn't Terra'd yet, but I think that's fine. They go for E-Speed. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Basically, what my opponent was setting up for is you get the double, hopefully you KO, or you don't KO Dudunsparce, but you bring it really low, and then you bring out the Iron Moth, and then you can angle for a double knockout. So, I think that was the right kind of line to try to take for my opponent. But now with Squawakabilly in the back, I've conserved it, so I just bring it out and click Final Gambit with it. So Moth comes out. Yeah, I'm happy to just Rock Slide here and Thunder Wave. I guess the main debate here is whether or not it's more consistent to click Light Screen, because Light Screen is basically guaranteed, whereas Thunder Wave can miss. But if I hit Thunder Wave and Flinch Moth here, I think the game's immediately over. I mean, quite frankly, I think it's over regardless, right? Because you no longer have the speed boost on this, so Squawakabilly just comes out and Final Gambits you for a knockout. But Thunder Wave is going to connect. So now their odds of attacking through this turn are incredibly slim. Assuming we connect Rock Slide, which we do. Yep. And there's a flinch. At this point, the only way I lose the game is if I were to, like, potentially throw and bring in SQUAWAKABILLY and it get crit. So all we do is basically wait for them to get a knockout onto one of these two Pokemon. SQUAWAKABILLY comes out and just clicks Brave Bird to end the game. But there's a good chance the Dunsparce just solos this with Rock Slide at this point. Yeah. Like, the odds of our opponent attacking through in this scenario are honestly fairly slim. But Klefki really cleared in this one. And this game highlights why Klefki is really good in this format as well. Because it can wall a lot of common attackers. And yeah, it's triple flinch. So this game highlights what this combo can do in particular. And a Dunsparce does connect on every Rock Slide. I should have been Hyper Drilling this turn, but it doesn't really matter, obviously. Part of me is actually kind of sad I didn't get something KO'd because I really wanted to get the SQUAWAKABILLY in for free and then end the game with Final Gambit. That was the main win con that I was setting up for. But in the end, I'm glad to feature a game where Dudunsparce actually does get to stay on the field and be super relevant. Once again, one of the main nice things about it is being able to surprise some Pokemon, outspeed them with Rock Slide, and obviously put on pressure with those flinches. And Klefki felt incredible in this one. So the nice thing about this matchup was, like, Annihilape commanded so much pressure, and to my opponent's credit, they did such a good job actually eliminating it, but we actually had so many other resources other than Annihilape, and all of the other Pokemon were really good into this matchup as well. So even though I didn't get Reflect Up early, and even though Annihilape got eliminated early, we still had a lot of pressure just from Klefki being able to do so much super effective damage with Dazzling Gleam. Chien-Pao Dragonite continues to be one of the more common duos in the format, so having something against it is obviously quite nice. And Klefki doesn't really take too much damage from either, unless you have, like, Earthquake, for example, on the Dragonite, or Sacred Sword on the Chien-Pao, but it looked like they didn't have either in that matchup, and so Klefki just really was not at much risk of taking any damage throughout that mid-game, which was really good for us, obviously. Okay, our last game here, we've got Murkrow, Chien-Pao, Palafin, Garganacl, Flutter, and Tusk. Huh, interesting. Haze from either Chien-Pao or Palafin is kind of annoying, especially given that we just ran into that. Palafin honestly looks pretty scary here, so I'm wondering if I should actually be bringing Tatsugiri for it. I kind of want to go SQUAWAKABILLY to Dunsparce in the early game. I really do think I should be bringing Palafin here. Or sorry, I said Palafin. Tatsugiri. You know what? I'm going to try a game where I don't bring Klefki. So lead SQUAWAKABILLY plus Annihilape, Dudunsparce plus Tatsu in the back. This is a little bit more offensive than the Klefki mode that I've been opting for in the other matches. But the general idea is with this, I can immediately go for a Final Gambit to KO something, get a quick Intimidate off, or I can just pivot out. If they lead Murkrow, obviously they can just try to set up Tailwind. There's 3 potential Haze users here, though, so I gotta watch out for that. But it's gonna be Murkrow plus the Tusk, which I think is not too bad for me. So you obviously can Tailwind right now, and then you can go for, like, a close combat onto me. Tailwind close combat's a really strong play for them, so I could actually Terra this into Ghost. But then I can't Terra anything else. I need to eliminate this, because otherwise they can haze me too easily, I feel like. Okay, I'm going for Bulk Up plus Final Gambit here, but this is a little bit risky because they can Tailwind close combat SQUAWAKABILLY. Okay. Nice, that works. Get Final Gambit into Murkrow. That's enough. Nice. That is a really ideal trade in my opinion, because Great Tusk is already at -1 attack. If you attack me here, you just boost Rage Fist, and I get Bulk Up. Knockoff, though. Oh, that is one of the best moves you could have against me. Like, I didn't really care for a Headlong Rush or an Earthquake in that position, but Knockoff is an excellent move for them. I'm in some trouble. I am in some trouble with what I brought here. Wow, that Knockoff actually changes everything, in my opinion. I'm gonna bring out Fluttermane, okay. So, I have Dudunsparce now. I think I'd like to go for a Protect here. Ghost Terra this. I don't think Fire Terra... So Fire Terra here helps against Flutter, but then I become weak to Tusk. And I already have a defense boost. So I'm thinking we Terra this so that I'm not weak to close combat, and I just Glare to paralyze this. Protect. I was trying to protect Annihilape. I forgot I'd already protected it. I guess it ends up working out because Flutter actually went for a Protect. The play I was trying to make, though, was protect Annihilape, Ghost Terra, and then Glare. But funnily enough, actually, because they protected, this ended up working out better. And the reason I wanted to do that was to cover for Choice Specs Flutter. Break as well. If I brought Klefki, I would have also been crushed. This is like the most anti-Tusk we could have run into. That's hilarious. Alright, well, that makes this very interesting now. Break as well. And I have Tatsu in the back, which is honestly... I only brought Tatsu for Palafin. I really am surprised. Well, actually, I say I'm really surprised, but my opponent probably identified it was Storm Drain Palafin, so good job. I went for Fire Terra, Rage Fist, and then Glare. They're probably just Fairy Terra Moonblasting into Dudunsparce. Yeah. Does that KO me, though? You're not Choice Specs. I guess a double up would allow them to KO. Tearing Dudunsparce wouldn't have really changed much here, though. Yeah, like the lack of free recovery from leftovers is so bad for me. That's an excellent move. Oh, they just offered Dazzling. I honestly think that's the best case scenario here. Holy moly. Okay, I was like, how did you do that much to me? But it's because they crit. Man, is there any world in which we survive that plus Brick Break? Probably not, right? Yeah, the lack of leftovers here is just so rough for me, isn't it? And funnily enough, it's like I could have brought Klefki in this matchup, but it actually wouldn't have done that much for me anyway. And that's Chien-Pao, yeah. My opponent just had too much fast-paced offense. I mean, Klefki still would have been fine for Dazzling Gleam. I think that's actually enough of a reason to bring it. But Knockoff was such a cool tech here. And Brick Break. Like, the combination of both of those gave me a ton of trouble. I needed, like, I don't know, maybe late game SQUAWAKABILLY. Like, I would have been better off leading SQUAWAKABILLY Klefki and then just, like, switching SQUAWAKABILLY out into Annihilape and clicking Dazzling Gleam a bunch. Something like that. Anyway, can we still win this? Probably not, but I'm not going to give up. If I protect here... and crit Draco onto Tusk, maybe there's an out. Okay, good start. So Tusk isn't protecting. I'm honestly, like, is it a Salt Vest? I actually went for Brick. Why would you not go for a ground type attack there? Yeah, Draco doesn't KO. If you have Sacred Sword now, though, you just double up onto Annihilape. But if they don't have Sacred Sword, they could also totally... I don't know, why would you... I don't understand why they didn't go for a ground type attack there. Oh, Drain Punch and Rapid Spin this. What? They went for a double? I don't think they needed to do that. But it works, I guess. And they had EQ. But if they fail the double, they lose the game, I think. Wow. That's a really risky double protect because you actually just win the game by attacking with... I mean... Yeah, that's actually a really interesting debate. Like, is it correct to go for the double there? Because, like, you won't be doing that much damage to your own Chien-Pao there. Like, if you're my opponent, you could have just gone for... Well, one, they could have gone for Earthquake last turn instead of Brick Break. But then, two, they also could have gone for, like, Ice Spin or Earthquake there to guarantee the KO onto Annihilape. Because the -2 Tatsugiri Draco plus the damage you take from Earthquake probably isn't going to KO that. So, I think that was incredibly risky. Because if I get that Drain Punch off, I just heal Annihilape all the way back up. And then we should survive any attack from that and then Rage Fist. So, I'll take it. In the end, like, we actually would have won this if my opponent didn't get the double. I guess I'm going to play to the double Draco Meteor crit win con now. But yeah, I don't know. I think that was a really risky double protect. I don't think they needed to go for it. Alright, they try to Sucker Punch. There's knockoff. Yeah, I would need a double crit right now. But we missed Draco anyway. Okay. With that, it's probably GG. The lack of leftovers was so tough for this one. Because, like, if we had leftovers, I could actually, like, think of a scenario where I keep, like, clicking Bulk Up. But, yeah. They just had way too much fast-paced offense. I try to get fancy by not bringing Klefki. I think Klefki would have just been the solution, honestly. Like, get the Reflect up and then go from there. Because I think I got a little bit spooked by going up against Haze in that previous game. And I was like, oh, Murkrow can have Haze. Chien-Pao can have Haze. And so instead I was like, let me trade. But losing SQUAWAKABILLY early was actually really rough for me because then I don't have Intimidate for the remainder of the team. So I think if I were to replay this, probably just go SQUAWAKABILLY plus Klefki lead and then go from there. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, the Tur 1 trade, it was also the knockoff on Tusk. I think being able to get rid of the leftovers or stop the healing is such a big deal with this team because by stopping the healing, Annihilape just does not get to snowball nearly as quickly, and I didn't really have that many opportunities to Drain Punch there in the end as well. But yeah, that double protect was really surprising. I think my opponent honestly should never go for that because I think it's just 1/3 of a chance to throw away the game, whereas if you just attack there, you should be fine. I guess they were worried about... No, especially because I had protected with the Annihilape already the previous turn. I think, like, those last 2 turns... Then I mean... It begs the question then whether or not I could have played towards my opponent making a misplay there. But it doesn't make sense to target Tusk there. I think it's fine doubling up onto Chien-Pao there. Because, yeah, two-thirds of the time we actually end up winning that game. I guess I need to account for a crit chance from Earthquake as well. But yeah, if you don't get the double there, we actually end up winning. That being said, I think fundamentally in this game, I didn't bring the best Pokemon. I prioritized knocking out Murkrow, and trading Klefki for Murkrow wasn't actually... Sorry, trading SQUAWAKABILLY for Murkrow wasn't actually that good for me. And then they also had a lot of late-game offense. And yeah, definitely wasn't expecting... What's funny, I talk about bringing Klefki, like they did have Brick Break, which actually would have allowed them to break through, but even having it for Dazzling Gleam would have been really good, given that they brought Tusk, the Chien-Pao, as well as the Murkrow as well. But yeah, I think Tusk is actually pretty scary to go up against, and even though we intimidated it, like, Tusk plus Flutter made me feel the need to commit my Terra to Annihilape, but once I committed my Terra, I suddenly became weak to the ground type attacks as well. So that was one of the other concerns. But, you know, given that they went for the Fairy Terra Dazzle, it felt like the only appropriate play here. So, yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So thank you so much, as always, for watching. This team is really, really wild, but it is just super crazy, and it's really fun to feature some Pokemon that you never really see any play in VGC, especially given that this team made a very deep run at a tournament as well. So thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy, and I'll catch you all next time. All right. Peace.